Jalen Hurts was hurting last week, but can Jalen Hurts hurt Washington with hurt legs? We'll talk about that more here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You got that right. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, along with my Wednesday co-host, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Locked On NFL. We got a good show for you today, and I'll give it to you right here where you can get it wherever you listen to or hear podcasts. Make sure you tap into that location so you do not miss an episode each and every day. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That is today's sponsor. And here are today's topics. We're going to end this show talking about the Bucs prepping to lose Liam Cohen. Hi, I'm Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. Since the recording of the Locked On NFL show where David Harrison and I talked about Liam Cohen has decided to remove himself from the Jacksonville Jaguars coaching search to remain in Tampa to become one of the largest or highest paid offensive coordinators in the National Football League. But I left it there because I think it symbolizes a bigger problem in Jacksonville that I have discussed in the past, and that is Trent Baalke's presence being a hindrance to the Jacksonville Jaguars getting a new head coach. So for your entertainment purposes, I'll leave it in, but I had to insert this note that Liam Cohen is no longer considered a candidate for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching position, and it was all his doing. He removed himself. A new era in New England feels old. New England said they were going on to a different era. And then they went and got all the old same people that basically took them to their old era. All right, and Jalen Hurts' legs are critical to the Eagles' hopes. Let's start right there. David, you're in an I'm envious, baby. It was an enviable position.
Enviable.
There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. We're going to get this tongue loose in a little bit. But you guys are planning to go to the Super Bowl. That's where, 32 teams hope to have this happen, and there's only 4 teams left. How does it feel? Like my man D'Angelo said, how does it feel to be where you are?
I mean, it's been fun. It's been fun. It's exciting, and you're just hoping that, these guys can put it together, get another victory, keep this thing rolling all the way to New Orleans. And that would just be an absolutely electric experience all on its own. But, to see the effort that these guys have put in, going all the way back to, even before rookie minicamps, drafts, all that stuff. Like, I just go back to the Dan Quinn introductory press conference, man, and how impressed I came away with everything that he said. But then, there's the pessimist in me. We all build off of our life experiences, right? And I remember Eric Bieniemy coming in, January, February timeframe of 2023 and saying all the right things and having everybody ready to run through walls and all the players showing up and sitting front row to see their new offensive coordinator, assistant head coach's press conference. And I was like, man, this is going to be different. This is going to feel different. And it was the same old song and dance. So, you had to have Dan Quinn put the practice behind the speech. And from rookie minicamp on, man, he did exactly that. And you see what it produces when a coach is aware of himself, honest about who he is himself, about what he expects, what he wants, what he's going to provide. And the players know that, and they maximize on it. This is what happens. You know what I mean? And what's even more exciting, Wig, which I'm not anxious to get to this part of the conversation, but this offseason, the Commanders got a full stable of draft picks, and they got $100 million in salary cap. I mean, this team just has the ability to go make even more moves in this offseason to be even better next year.
Yep. All right, so we're going to get to the game. We're going to get to predictions. I got my man Lou DiBiase going to tell you some keys from the Eagles. And then we're going to come back And talk about the fact that some people believe that they don't have a chance in hell when some people actually believed that last week. And I even played proof on here last week before the game and then after the game of videos of you telling everybody the Washington Commanders absolutely have a chance. Listen to my man Lou DiBiase. Lou ain't saying nothing like that. Lou's a nice guy. Listen to him from Locked On Eagles.
So the conversation today about Jalen Hurts continues to surround the passing game, the inconsistencies. Can they win a Super Bowl without the passing game being great? I think the Eagles need Jalen Hurts to be special at times over these next two games. Like, there will be moments he has to be great to win a Super Bowl. But I'm more worried about his leg, like the health of that knee or ankle or whatever the injury is, over his ability to pass the ball. Because if Jalen Hurts is going to be special in these next two games, it's going to come more from what he does with his legs, to create for the pass, to create for Saquon Barkley, to make plays outside of structure and inside structure, like that 44-plus yard touchdown run in the first quarter. Like, the Eagles need Jalen Hurts' threat of mobility, or else that's going to make things a lot harder on Saquon Barkley. It's going to make things a lot harder on the passing game. That's what I'm more worried about, is not the passing game consistency. Is Jalen healthy? He needs to be able to run the football and to move.
That is a very underrated thing. Saying that, like somebody said yesterday, that all of the Buffalo Bills said we wanted to put the ball in Lamar's hands and thought that was some indictment. No, when you have a great running back and a great quarterback and then you have the elements, you have to pick your poison. That's what you have to do. You got to say, I'm not giving you the whole buffet. I'm going to take one side of this kitchen away from you, and I'm going to let you beat me with the other side, even though you're capable of doing it. And we saw Lamar just about pull that thing off. It is not an indictment on that player. It's just saying, how can we just force him to do one thing? And if he's hurt, that one thing actually is more difficult to do because he can't use his legs.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, depending on the injury report, obviously Jalen's a big part of this. Quinyon Mitchell is a big part of this. I'll say right now, like, if Jalen is as banged up as he looked after that NFC divisional game, and Quinyon Mitchell, can't go, I can tell you right now, I'm going to pick the Commanders to win this football game. Mm-hmm. And Eagles fans who hear me say that are going to say, "Oh, you're sleeping on the Eagles," and bro, the Eagles are in the NFC Championship game. And nobody's sleeping on you. Ain't nobody sleeping on the final four teams in the National Football League. Just because you get picked against doesn't mean you're being slept on, disrespected, or anybody's saying you're a bad football team. The Philadelphia Eagles won the NFC Championship game. They won double-digit games, or NFC East Division Championship, I should say. They won double-digit games. They've beaten two good teams in the Green Bay Packers and Los Angeles Rams to get to where they are. Nobody's going to say that they're a bad team, but they are a beatable team. The Washington Commanders are a beatable team. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills are beatable teams. You know what I mean? So that's not an insult in and of itself. That being said, Jalen Hurts has the longest time to throw average of every starting quarterback in the National Football League. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have the longest average time to throw because he stands in the pocket like a statue behind that great offensive line. Now, he does have a great offensive line that allows him to stand in the pocket longer than most quarterbacks get to. But he has that longest average time to throw because he can move, because he can escape the pocket, extend the play, do all those things, and find ways to get the ball downfield. Now, even with that ability, you saw once he gets hampered and once the weather becomes a player, the Los Angeles Rams set some records for getting sacks last weekend. Jared Verse, if you didn't already know about Jared Verse, you found out about him in that game. And these are things that are significant problems for the Philadelphia Eagles, because if Jalen Hurts can't move, then the easy fan and the easy analyst will say, okay, well, you understand you can't move, so get the ball out faster. Well, that's fantastic when you're playing video games. But Jalen Hurts is now going to be going out there fighting his own natural instinct. You have to understand that's the way Jalen plays football. So as easy as it is for me to sit in my warm office and say, on that cold night in Philadelphia or cold afternoon in Philadelphia, just play different, you're literally asking this man to do something that goes against every fiber of his athletic nature. That's not easy to do. So we'll see how much he can overcome that on Sunday, because I don't believe he's going to come in there fully healthy regardless. He's going to play, but he's definitely going to be hampered.
Yep, and coaches teach you all the time, when you have a mobile quarterback, don't run past his armpits, especially if you're on the outside, because if you give him an alley, he's gone. And that affects how you rush. You can actually run past his armpits now because he may not want to run. And then when he does, the people at the next level can get him before he gets a first down. You got anything you want to say to anybody? Like, did somebody say something to a tweet that you like former players or anybody. Okay, you said something about the Eagles. You wrote an article and you responded to somebody that didn't. Seth Joyner, I think, is a great player.
Look,
I watched when I was in the military. Go ahead,
absolutely.
Talk to me.
Seth Joyner is a great player, and listen, it's just kind of like what we were just talking about. Look, there's disrespect and there's trash talk. And now a lot of times when you get trash talk by somebody you don't know, you take it immediately to disrespect. And that's certainly within Seth's right if that's where he wants to take it. You know what I mean? But Seth Joyner went on the radio and said the Washington Commanders don't have a snowball chance, to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, just talking that trash. And he even said, replay it all week long. I want you to replay it all week long. You know what I mean? He's just talking trash. It's supposed to be fun. So I caught wind of it and I wrote a little article, little column for commandergameday.com, part of Sports Illustrated, family of sites. And I talk trash back. You know what I mean? I talk trash back. It's trash talk, bro. It's what we do. It's like battle rapping. At the end of the day, you both drop your mics and you walk off the stage. Seth got a little upset about it. She sent a tweet. He didn't send it to me. He didn't DM me. My DMs are open. So I don't think Seth was really looking to actually come at me, but more so just to show people that follow him that he's not going to take trash talk lightly and disrespect lying down, and that's fine. That's fair. It is what it is. I'm not boo-boo about it. If that's where he leaves it, then that's where we will leave it because it's not personal. You know what I mean? I don't know him personally. Know me personally. We don't know each other man to man. It's two people in media because whether he likes it or not, Seth, you were on the radio. You got a podcast. You're in the media.
Yep.
That's all it is. Media members poking fun at each other. Well, he wasn't poking fun at me at first, but I poked fun at him and then he caught back. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Unless he decides to escalate it himself.
Yeah, go ahead and read it. But I will say this, and I say this all the time because when this happened to me when I was in radio, and actually the dude that said it, we're real good friends right now. You don't know what you're talking about. You ain't never played the game. No, beyond my 11th grade year in high school, I did not play the game. But we're not talking about me as a player. We're talking about what I see. And now you got football players talking about what they're seeing. They're using their experience. And I always said football players are gladiators, right? I'm always Jimmy's and Joe's over coaches. I'm always saying that. I'm saying it's about the players. It ain't about the coaches. Coaches can only take you so far. I give them credit. But then it always goes to being a competitor. I got stuff hanging on my wall in there that'll show you how much of a competitor I am. All right. And you would marvel at some of the things. And I know you, David, and we don't use valor to talk about that. But when people got to understand, they don't know what you've done and what you've seen when it comes to being a competitor, because football players talk about things that they didn't do all the time. I've had guys in my chair that were boxers that told me they knew more about other sports. And then I'm like, well, how can you talk about that, but I can't talk about what you do? They said, well, it's about being a competitor. Now you take it away from sports. And I can tell you this, I got commendation medals for a reason, right? And by the way, didn't Washington beat the Eagles when the Eagles could have had home field advantage or had a chance for it?
Yeah. I mean, they eventually clinched it anyway, right? But
they clinched it. But how did they clinch it? How did they clinch it?
That's the thing is
who beat the team that allowed the Eagles to have that game in Philly this weekend?
Exactly. If he just said the Eagles going to win, he could even say Eagles going to win by 2 scores. Okay, that's bold. It's when you say they don't have a snowball's chances, bro. They already beat the Eagles once. They also already had a fourth quarter lead against the Eagles in the game they lost. So they got more than a snowball's chance. It don't mean the Commanders are gonna win. That's the only thing. It's just you want to talk trash, bro. You talk trash, you're gonna get talk trash back. That's how this works. You a grown man, you know how this works. Don't be surprised.
Shout out to all the football players and basketball players. Y'all definitely did something I wanted to do as a child, and I wasn't good enough to do it. But don't act like we ain't never done nothing. All right, so we'll go and move on.
Had fun doing it too.
Yeah, had fun doing it too. That's right. In some stupid situations. All right. New era in New England seems real old. We'll hit that and more here as we continue. Locked on NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Locked On NFL, continuing on talking about these playoffs, man, and competition and all of that good stuff. We're going to see a lot of bravado this weekend in a lot of these games. One of the teams that people keep comparing the Chiefs to are the dynasty of the Patriots, and rightfully so. I even, like in my mind, said, okay, you take the best of the Chiefs dynasty and the best of the Patriots dynasty, who wins that game, and all of that stuff, and it's fun to do that. And I understand the Patriots always wanting to do the thing that made them most successful. But when parted ways with Bill Belichick, they said they were moving to a new era. They hired Bill Belichick's former coach. That didn't work. So they hired his former player. Then they just hired another one of his former players. And he just hired a Bill's old offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels. I want you to hear my man Mike Debate talk about that. And then we'll come back and talk about why this feels like Duke and North Carolina hoops to me. I'll draw the parallel in just a second.
Josh McDaniels' return to the New England Patriots can be seen as a bit of back to the future. And trust me, folks, that's a good thing. I'm Mike Debate, host of Locked On Patriots, and from the time that Mike Vrabel took the reins, it seemed like a foregone conclusion that Josh McDaniels would be the guy that he'd bring in to help guide the offense. With McDaniels, the Patriots get a ton of experience at the position, maybe the most comprehensive offensive mind available on the market, and also stability. Josh's days of chasing head coaching positions are likely over, and that's going to give him plenty of time to work with Drake, develop a long-lasting relationship. And when you look at McDaniels' track record of working with top-level quarterbacks, it really is second to none. Some Patriots fans are concerned that the game may have passed him by. But from the sources I've spoken with, Josh has taken several steps over the course of the last couple of years to visit college programs as well as NFL programs to help modernize his approach to not only play calling, but also in-game strategy.
I think the biggest thing he had to modernize was the way he talked to people and treated people while he was the head coach. I think he's fine as an offensive coordinator. And I have said that one of the things that a lot of teams, and even in Jacksonville, folks are concerned about hiring a defensive coach because that means the offensive coordinator, like Tampa, might be leaving every single year. We'll talk about Liam Cohen in a little bit. That doesn't concern me with guys like Josh McDaniels because he's like North Turner. He's already had two apples of the head coaching bite. He's had two bites of the apple. I don't think nobody's going to come poach him from you, even if they win. Kind of like Spagnuolo being over there on the defensive side of the ball in Kansas City. But I will say this. I brought up Duke and North Carolina. When you have so much success, you become a family. And you think moving forward, everyone has to have come from that tree. And those are two places where it seems like every single coach that Duke hires is a Krzyzewski protege, and every single coach that North Carolina hires in basketball played for Dean Smith at some point. So is that going to work in the NFL? Is it new, or is it just a new way to do the old thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question here, right? Is how much has Mike Vrabel learned from his first experience, leading the Tennessee Titans? How much has Josh McDaniels really learned? Because you kind of feel like this is going to be one of those situations where Josh McDaniels runs his unit, Mike Vrabel runs the defense and his staff. I mean, he's bringing in he's replacing DeMarcus Covington, rather, I should say, with Terrell Williams. Wow, getting names mixed up here. He's bringing in Terrell Williams, who was his D-line coach in Tennessee for 6 years. So, like, a lot of this is kind of retread. A lot of this is we've seen this dance before. You know what I mean? And of course, everybody's talking about, coming in this year, it was who could be the next Houston Texans. Well, coming in next year, it's going to be who can be the next Washington Commanders. And a lot of people are going to point to the Patriots and they're going to say they got a young quarterback, they got a head coach who's done it before, who's learned a lot of lessons. But at the end of the day, the question really is going to be how many lessons have they actually learned? Experiences are not lessons. Experiences are only lessons if you take what's supposed to be learned from them and adapt your behavior to them. If Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, and Terrell Williams haven't learned anything from what got them fired, I know that Vrabel lasted a good long little bit with the Tennessee Titans, but eventually he did get fired. If these guys haven't learned from what got them fired, eventually they're going to suffer the same fate. You know what I mean? So it is the same old Belichick tree thing, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a different flavor to it because Vrabel is not necessarily just going after Belichick guys, because Belichick guys also happen to be Vrabel guys. And then, again, Williams is not a Belichick guy from my understanding. He's a purely Vrabel guy. So, there's a little bit of repeat. There's a little bit of newness to it. We'll see, man. Again, it's going to be rubber meets the road, right? Mike Vrabel, I'm sure, is saying all the right things right now. We'll see what happens when the play gets put on the field.
Yep. And it appears that switching to Detroit real quick, and we're going to push both of these topics, been to the Bears and the Bucs and the Bucs preparing to lose Liam Cohen. But with Williams, it's like, okay, so Dan Campbell's going to not just lose his two coordinators. He might lose his entire staff or a big part of his staff because they are going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. Speaking of Dan Campbell, one of his coaches has already been hired. The other is suspected to be hired. Ben goes to the Bears, and it almost feels like one of the worst kept secrets in the National Football League. Tell you what, we're going to talk about it in just a second as we close the show, and we'll do it here on Locked On NFL in just a minute. Today's show is sponsored in part and brought to you by Talkspace. Listen, man, therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate. It helps you communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 24 or 48 hours. It's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. And for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. Listen, man, I'm an alpha male. I know when people say that, they usually aren't, but I am. One of the things I had to realize was, letting somebody help you through some tough times is something that's good for you. And I've learned that. As a listener of the podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Enter the promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and enter the promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code SPACE80. All right, third segment here on Locked On NFL. A lot going on in the National Football League that does not involve playoff teams. Ben Johnson has been hired by the Bears. Let's just get right to it and let Brian Peacock and Matt Williams from the Peacock and Williamson podcast tell you how they feel about it. Now, it's about a minute and 40 seconds, so bear with me. But listen, it's very, very good information.
Ben Johnson has been hired. Now that the Lions are out, this came together quickly, and Ben Johnson is the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. I have some thoughts on this. Some thoughts on potentially how this affects the team build going forward. And something just struck me this morning like a bolt of lightning about the NFL draft now as it pertains to the Chicago Bears and this build with Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson. And if I'm not mistaken, a connection here that I did not put together before all of this. And there is always a connection, Matt. There's
Take it away. Give me all your thoughts, man.
They were together at Boston College. Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I had no idea either. And there's always a path.
There's always a
coaches and GMs, and that's why he was so comfortable here. You think about the Jaguars job he said no to. And we talk about the Jags finalists. Maybe not, when we talked about it, Jags keeping Trent Baalke was a decision because that changes a lot about which coaches they're going to be able to hire there. We'll focus on the Jags in a second, but what are your thoughts? Ben Johnson to the Chicago Bears.
Let me run something by you. Would it give you any pause from Johnson's perspective to stay in division, especially a really difficult division? Or do you look at that as, I already know these guys and I'm not scared to play against the Lions. I know them like the back of my hand. And I had the game plan against the Bears defense and it's pretty darn good. I don't have to do a lot to it. I mean, how would you look at that? There's two sides of that coin.
Yeah, I would think that it's probably difficult anywhere, and the right job trumps everything as far as that goes. But at the same time, you're not in the AFC West. It is a good division, and it could be a great division for a very long time. So I think that would give you a little pause and be maybe a tiebreaker.
So it appears that Poles and Johnson cross paths. They weren't on the same staff. One guy leaves in 2008. The other guy starts in 2008, but there were some months there. And then that's Ryan Poles' alma mater, and Ben Johnson was there for 2 years as a GA. So there is a connection. I recall in 1993, Washington drafted Heath Shuler, and they hired Norv Turner away from the two-time winning Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. Everyone thought that it would work. It didn't. So I'm not saying that that's the case with Ben Johnson, but we do have to be careful. And coaches don't care about being in a division, coaching in a bad division. There's 32 jobs in the NFL, man. All of these dudes think that they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, as long as you give them the right resources.
Yeah, I mean, look, my concerns about Ben Johnson for Chicago are being, the same concerns I've had for Ben Johnson when he was supposed to be the hottest target, coming to Washington, and that is that you just don't hear a lot about his leadership. You know what I mean? You hear a lot about his football acumen, IQ, X's and O's, game plans, schemes, play designs, all that stuff. And that's great. You know what I mean? But look, every head coach in the National Football League knows X's and O's. Every coach in the National Football League knows how to draw up good plays. Like, you don't get there without knowing all that stuff and doing all that stuff. That's not what it takes to be a successful head coach. It takes being a leader of men. It takes building a good staff, not a good staff, a great staff, supporting that staff, and that staff supporting the players. It's hard, man. It's hard. You know what I mean? I mean, what it is, like 25% of this league's head coaches get fired every year, something like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's a hard job to do. I wish Ben all the best of luck. I think he's certainly got some talent on that roster, but he's also got some talent on that roster that has had some bad coaching. And when you have talent on a roster that has a big voice in your locker room, but has been through some bad coaching, you kind of have to come in and almost prove right away to those players that they should follow you, because if you come in spouting off all kinds of crap and it doesn't work almost immediately, they're gonna tap out. They're gonna tune you out almost just as quick. And that's not every player, right? But that's certainly some of these players. And then you also have the underlying, storyline that nobody's talking about, which right now there's no reason to, that some of these players wanted Caleb Williams benched. I don't know who those players were specifically. Heaven help you if it was DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, guys like that, Cole Kmet, any of those guys. If it was any of those guys, you got another problem on your hands, because Caleb may have done better down the stretch, or maybe, but Ben Johnson, he'll do better, all this other stuff. But I'll tell you, but you know as well as I do, Wig, once a professional player gets to the point where they're calling for a dude's job, that's pretty much gone past the stage of being a repairable relationship. So there's a lot of question marks, you know what I mean? And then not to mention you're in the NFC North, right? The Minnesota Vikings look good. The Detroit Lions are obviously good. The Green Bay Packers are good. Like, you're not taking over the worst team in a division that's ripe for the taking. You're taking over the worst team in a division that is very, very competitive. So there's a lot stacked up against Ben. We'll see how it all turns out in the end. But, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm excited that the team is at least moving in a direction that seems to be positive, but, don't go buying your Ben Johnson jerseys just yet.
I was on radio here in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville Locked On Jaguars listeners know this story, but this was years ago. The Jaguars had drafted Miles Jack in the second round. He fell in the second round, right? Mm-hmm. And fans on radio kept saying they need to play him. They need to play him. Well, they had Telvin Smith, and the Jaguars were primarily playing two linebackers at that time, and people were like, they need to play him. So I went into the locker room, and I echoed that, and there were three players around me. And I was talking to one of them, but the other two, they knew me, so they were talking. I said, yeah, man, these fans really want him to play. And one of them said, well, who's he going to replace? And I said, well, they're saying Paz. They said, who? I said, Paul Posluszny. There was, I don't know if y'all watched The Wire when Clay Davis was on there, but there were three NFL players that all said a word that rhymes with it, but they stretched it out like, players feel totally different than your opinion, than your draft analysis. There are certain people in that locker room that have leadership ability, and when you question them, and now on the flip side, if they're questioning a player, it is for a reason. You need to make sure you understand that. I think Ben has a lot of work to do when it comes to Caleb. The Bucs are preparing to lose Liam Cohen, according to my man James Yarko and his crew on Locked On Bucs. I'm going to talk to you about that, and then we're going to listen to it, and we'll come back and talk about them losing him and where he possibly is going.
That the Buccaneers are preparing for Liam Cohen to be offered the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching job as early as Wednesday. Evan, let's start with this. If Liam does get the head coaching job offer from Jacksonville, do you see any way that he turns it down a la Ben Johnson last year to stay in Tampa?
I have a very tough time believing that's going to happen. There are 32 of these suckers, and while the GM position there and how that structure is set up is really ass backwards, to be honest, there's still a lot to like with the Jaguars on the field. Remember, this was a team where we thought not too long ago, I mean, even entering the season, that, hey, this is a sleeper team to win their division and, go to the playoffs and so on and so forth. That division, just like the NFC South, is not that strong, and you already have your franchise quarterback.
All right, listen. So I got what I wanted to get out of that. The bottom line is the Jaguars it looks like that they're leaning towards Liam Cohen, and we can't substantiate that right now, obviously, but a second round of interviews. The Bucs will now be doing the thing that a lot of people fear when you have a defensive background head coach. Is they'll be replacing another offensive coordinator. Baker's never had the same offensive coordinator in the National Football League. I think because he's a veteran now, that's done. That's for young. Once you prove yourself, that's over with. Guys will come in and lean towards you. Here's my question for you. The same way we talked about players and leadership, people in Tampa love Todd Bowles way more than a lot of people on Twitter love Todd Bowles. So we got about a minute. So tell me about Todd Bowles and why you think they're not doing to him what they did to Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith, and that's replacing with somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, people love Todd Bowles. You know what I mean? Like, you talk to these players, they absolutely love the man. They love the defense coordinator. They love the coach. Todd Bowles is highly respected inside that building. The problem that you always see with Todd Bowles teams is they seem to be externally motivated. You know what I mean? When the competition is high and impressive, they turn up for it. When the competition is low, they turn down for it. And that's obviously going to be a problem from time to time. And you're going to come out in some games flat and all these things. The things that people really liked about Liam Cohen is that even in games where the Buccaneers as a whole looked bad, his offense never looked like it was lacking competitive juice. Whether they were lacking production is one thing, but they never seemed like they were lacking competitive juice. And what that tells you is, again, you have another situation where this team is basically coached by two different people. The offense is coached by one guy, the defense is coached by another guy, and not in the sense that they have two coordinators, but in the sense that they're almost like two different teams as far as how they approach preparation. And that's where most of the people on Twitter are getting their ammo from is looking at that. Look, I get it. You know what I mean? I do. But at the same time, you got to remember, man, like Bruce Arians is still tied to this organization. Jason Light brought Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles in. He's still the GM of this organization. The Glazer family is very much a loyalist type of family. And, look, they made this move. They fired Lovie Smith to keep Dirk Cutter because they wanted Jameis Winston to keep his offensive coach. And it did not go well. I'm not telling you that's why the Glazers aren't doing it, but obviously, business people, especially they make a move and they get burned by it. They're not very quick to make the same move again down the road. So, there's a lot of factors here to it, but at the same time, also, like, if you're going to get rid of Todd Bowles, I mean, a lot of that coaching staff is attached to Todd Bowles too. So now you're not talking about, you might have Liam Cohen, but the question the Jacksonville Jaguars have to ask themselves too, and that's going to ultimately, again, we go back to Ben Johnson, man. Like, I'll tell you, I've heard a lot more about Liam Cohen's leadership than I have Ben Johnson's leadership.
I heard a lot about Aaron Glenn's leadership more than I have.
Yeah,
Ben
Aaron
Johnson's
Glenn's leadership, right?
Yeah.
But the question will still be, what is Liam Cohen's staff going to look like? Because he comes from the Sean McVay tree. Are McVay coaches going to leave Los Angeles to join him in Tampa? I don't know. I can't tell you that right now. You know what I mean? But the Buccaneers would have the same situation. The only difference is you don't have as much of an opportunity to retain coaches because you fired the dude that they all came here to coach with. Yeah. So, there's a lot of balancing factors in there with it. But, the Buccaneers seemingly needing to hire a fourth offensive coordinator in as many years, certainly not advantageous, but it's a good problem to have. It means you've been successful, right? Last thing I'll say about it, man, as far as any hopes from the Bucs fan that this turns into a Ben Johnson situation where Liam goes out there but then says, nah, I'm good. I don't think that's going to happen because, if you believe the stories of why Ben Johnson did that, the situation is not the same. You go into an interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars, understanding that Trevor Lawrence is going to be your quarterback if you take this job, at least in the beginning. So I don't think Liam Cohen had any misgivings or a misunderstanding of, going into the first interview about who his quarterback was going to be if he does take this job or gets this job. So going to the second interview, there should be no reason that Liam tries to strong arm anybody into getting rid of Trevor. Like, Trevor's the guy for at least, I would say, the first 2 years you're in that seat, if not longer.
No doubt about it. Who says there ain't stuff to talk about when there's only 4 teams left, man? We're going to do this every day here on Locked On NFL. We do it twice a day with Tyler Rowland early in the morning and me here in the afternoon in the barbershop. Make sure you tap in. David, good luck to you this weekend. Travel safe. Icy roads all over the place. It's snoring here in Florida right now. It's unbelievable. But make sure you guys be safe on your commutes. Also, make sure you tap into Locked On NFL here every single day, where it's your team every day. Take care. We'll see you later.